I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. My name's David, and I've been married to Emily for about 5 years now. On the outside, it looked like a pretty typical marriage, happy enough, or so I thought. We had our routines. She was a bit bitchy sometimes, but I chalked it up to stress or her having a bad day. She's always been a bit of a liar, too, quick with excuses and always wanting to spin stories to make herself look better. Still, I trusted her, or at least I wanted to. Things started feeling off a few months ago. Emily suddenly became more distant, secretive even. She started coming home later, claiming work was demanding more of her time, but her phone was always locked and her behavior changed. She'd be on her phone a lot, texting or scrolling through apps I didn't recognize. It was weird, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I figured maybe she was just stressed, or maybe she was hiding something innocent. That was the mistake I made, thinking it was all just in my head. One night I was cleaning up some stuff in her purse. Yeah, I know. It's invasive, but I was desperate for answers. I found a receipt from a hotel downtown, a place I knew she never went to for work. That set off warning bells big time. I didn't say anything right then, I just kept it in my mind and watched her more carefully. The next day she was on the phone again, whispering and giggling into her phone like a teenage girl. When I asked who she was talking to, she snapped at me, got defensive and said she was talking to her sister. But I knew better. The signs were piling up and I felt this knot tightening in my stomach. Then I decided to check her messages. I didn't want to invade her privacy, but I felt like I had no choice anymore. I managed to unlock her phone when she left it on the table one afternoon and saw a string of texts, flirty, suggestive, explicitly talking about meeting up, sex, and even plans to hide things from me. My stomach dropped. I read through her messages and I could feel my blood boiling. She was lying left and right, claiming she was working late, that she was tired, that I was just imagining things. But the messages told a different story. She was cheating, and she was a bitch about it, lying, denying, trying to cover her tracks even though there was no way out of it now. That's when I started to see her for what she really was, not the loving wife I thought I knew, but someone who could lie to my face, cheat behind my back, and then act like I was the one overreacting when I found out. I felt humiliated, angry, betrayed. All those years I'd trusted her and she was just using me. I wanted to confront her then and there, but I knew I needed a plan. I needed to get all the evidence, stay calm, and figure out what my next move was. Because whatever I did, it was going to change everything. I couldn't believe what I was reading, but I knew I had to keep cool. Confronting her right then and there wouldn't do anything except make her lie her way out of it or spin some bullshit story. So I waited. I stayed quiet that night, pretending everything was normal, but inside I was boiling. I replayed those messages over and over, feeling this mix of anger, hurt, and a sick sense of betrayal. How could she lie so easily? How could she cheat after all we'd been through? I kept telling myself I was just overreacting, maybe reading too much into her actions, but the evidence was there, clear as day. The next morning, I decided I needed to face her head on. I woke up early, made some coffee, and sat her down. She was still half asleep, bitchy as usual, and she looked at me like I was bothering her. That's when I dropped the bomb, showed her the messages, the hotel receipt, everything, her reaction. She rolled her eyes, scoffed, and said I was just paranoid, that I was making stuff up, that she'd never do something like that. She called me insecure, accused me of spying on her, and then started with the usual gaslighting. You're just imagining things. You don't trust me. You're paranoid because you're insecure. I couldn't hold back anymore. I felt a rush of rage rising in me. How dare she call me insecure? I'd been nothing but loyal, and she was out screwing some guy just a few blocks away from our house. That's when I told her I knew everything and she still kept lying. That's when her bitchy mask slipped for a second and I saw the real her, cold, calculating, and unapologetic about it. She went from trying to pretend she was innocent to flipping the script, yelling at me, calling me crazy, and saying I was overreacting. She said she was tired of my accusations, tired of the drama, and told me I needed therapy because I was losing it. I felt like I was hit by a freight train. For the first time, I saw her for what she was, someone willing to lie, cheat, and manipulate just to keep her secret. I don't even know how I kept my composure, but I told her she was a disgusting liar, that I was done with the lies, and that I was going to find out the truth no matter what it took. That night, I stayed up, digging through her phone again, trying to find more proof. I knew I wasn't imagining it. The pieces were all there. This wasn't some innocent little mistake. She was actively betraying me, and I felt every ounce of pain and rage that came with that realization. I didn't sleep much that night. All I could think about was how my whole life was crumbling around me, how I had trusted her, and how she had thrown it all away for some meaningless sex. I knew I had to decide what to do next, but honestly, I was just numb. One thing was clear. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Whatever she thought she was going to do next, I was already several steps ahead. I just didn't know how I was going to handle the fallout once I finally confronted her with everything. The morning after the confrontation was a blur. I was exhausted, not just physically but emotionally. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck, battered by the betrayal I'd uncovered. I knew I couldn't just keep pretending everything was fine. I had to come up with a plan, a way to deal with her with this mess. But honestly, I was angry. So angry I didn't trust myself to do anything rational. Still, I knew I had to think clearly if I was going to get through this. I spent most of the day planning my next steps. I decided I needed more concrete evidence before I did anything drastic. I started recording her calls and messages covertly. I even set up a hidden camera in the living room, just in case she tried to deny her affairs again. I wasn't proud of spying, but I felt I didn't have a choice. Trust was already shattered, and I couldn't afford to be naive anymore. I also reached out to a guy she'd been texting, someone I'd never met who turned out to be her lover. I got his number and started to piece everything together. From his messages, I learned they'd been sneaking around for months. She'd been lying about everything. As I gathered proof, my feelings kept shifting. I went from shock and outrage to deep sadness and disappointment. How could she do this? How could she lie so effortlessly? It was like she was a different person, completely manipulative, cold, and without remorse. I kept asking myself if I missed the signs, if I should have seen this coming, but the truth is, I trusted her blindly. I thought she was the love of my life, and now all I had left was this bitter taste of betrayal. I felt stupid for not noticing earlier, but mostly I felt hurt. Really hurt that the woman I loved, the woman I married, had been betraying me behind my back the entire time. That night, I finally sat her down again. I told her I had everything I needed, that I knew about her affair, and I wanted her to be honest with me. Her reaction: she started to cry. Not because she felt guilty, but because she was furious I was exposing her. She snapped at me, calling me paranoid, jealous, and insecure, that old familiar gaslighting. She said she only did it because I was neglecting her, that I wasn't paying enough attention, that I was boring, that it was just sex and guys are guys. She spun this whole story about how she needed excitement, how she felt trapped, and how I was the one who was controlling and suffocating her. It was a classic move. She tried to twist things around, make me feel guilty, make me question myself. But I wasn't about to fall for that. I told her I knew everything, that she was a liar and that I was done. I told her I was going to divorce her, that I couldn't be with someone who lied and cheated like that. She just looked at me with this venomous glare, and for the first time I saw her for the bitch she truly was, not the innocent wife I thought I'd married, but a manipulative, selfish person who only cared about herself. That moment was a turning point. I knew I couldn't keep pretending things would get better. The trust was gone, and I had to accept that. I also started thinking about how to handle the upcoming fallout. I knew I'd have to confront her again, possibly get a lawyer, and prepare for a long fight ahead. It was already tearing me apart, but I knew I had to do what was right for me. I couldn't stay married to someone who lied so easily and cheated so blatantly. I was hurt, yes, but I also felt a strange sense of relief. Like I was finally waking up from a nightmare I didn't even realize I was in. Still, I was scared of what was coming next, the emotional chaos, the legal battles, the heartbreak. But deep down, I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. I deserved better than this dishonest, manipulative BS. And honestly, I was done feeling sorry for myself. It was time to take control of my life and move forward, no matter how hard it might be. The day I decided to move forward was the day I felt a heaviness lift off my shoulders, even though I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. I gathered all the evidence, screenshots, recordings, the hotel receipts, her messages, and I made an appointment with a divorce lawyer. I knew I couldn't trust her anymore, not after everything. The betrayal ran too deep. I also made sure to talk to a friend I could trust, just to get some perspective and emotional support. I didn't want to go through this completely alone, even if I had to handle most of it myself. That afternoon, I confronted her one last time. I told her I was done pretending, done giving her the benefit of the doubt. I laid everything out, showing her the proof I'd collected. Her reaction? She laughed, literally, a cold, bitter laugh that sent chills down my spine. She said I was overreacting, that I was jealous and insecure, that I was making a big deal out of nothing. She insisted she was innocent, that the messages were just flirty talk, that she didn't mean anything by it. She called me paranoid, then accused me of controlling her, of being the problem in our marriage. I looked her right in the eyes and told her she was a liar and a cheat. I said I didn't want to be with someone who lied to my face and betrayed me like this. I told her I was filing for divorce and that my priority was to get out of this nightmare as quickly as possible. Her bitchy attitude only worsened. She snapped at me, saying I was ruining her life, that I was being unreasonable and that she didn't deserve this, that she still loved me, but I saw through her. I saw how manipulative she was, trying to guilt-trip me and keep me from leaving. That night, I stopped by the lawyer's office, dropped off the evidence, and started the process. It felt surreal. This wasn't how I imagined my marriage ending, but honestly, I felt a huge weight off my shoulders. I knew I was making the right choice, even if it hurt like hell. I kept replaying everything in my mind. The lies, the secret nights, her dismissive attitude when I brought it up, the way she'd lie straight to my face without blinking. It was disgusting. I felt so betrayed, so angry, but also a strange sense of clarity. I finally saw her for who she really was, a selfish, manipulative person who cared about herself more than she ever cared about me. In the coming days, I prepared myself for the emotional fallout. I knew she'd be angry, maybe even try to manipulate the situation further, but I refused to be drawn into her games. I started focusing on myself, my work, my friends, my mental health. I realized I'd been putting her first for so long, and now I needed to put myself first. I didn't want to be bitter or hate her, but I couldn't ignore what she'd done either. That wasn't healthy. Instead, I chose to accept what happened, learn from it, and move on. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know I won't make the mistake of trusting blindly again. I'll be more cautious, more aware. But most importantly, I'll never forget the lessons I learned from this. If you're reading this and going through something similar, just know, trust your gut. Don't ignore the signs, no matter how much you love someone or how much you want things to work out. Because sometimes love isn't enough, especially when betrayal is involved. And in the end, you have to choose yourself over someone who's willing to lie and cheat. That's the only way to truly heal. The divorce process was a hell of a ride. I won't sugarcoat it. There were moments when I felt like I was drowning in anger, sadness, and frustration. Emily kept trying to manipulate the situation, calling me names, accusing me of being the bad guy, and even trying to turn friends and family against me. She insisted she was innocent, that I was just overreacting, and that she made a mistake but still loved me. Yeah, right. Like I was going to buy that after what I found out. But I stayed firm. I had the evidence and I knew the truth. I kept my cool during most of the legal stuff, though inside I was boiling. I wanted to lash out, scream, or break something, but I knew that wouldn't help. I just focused on making sure everything was documented, that I got what I deserved in the settlement, and that I protected myself from her manipulative games. It took weeks, but eventually, the judge signed off on the divorce. I was free, free from her lies, her betrayal, and her bitchy attitude that had haunted me for months. Once it was finalized, I planned a little getaway for myself. Just some time to breathe, clear my head, and start over. I realized I'd been living in a kind of fog, pretending everything was fine when deep down I was dying inside. Now that I was out of that toxic situation, I felt this strange mix of relief and grief. Relief because I didn't have to deal with her bullshit anymore. Grief because, damn, I lost the woman I thought I knew, but I also knew I was better off without her. During this time, I started reconnecting with old friends and focusing on myself. I realized how much I'd sacrificed, how I'd let her walk all over me, and how I'd ignored my own happiness for too long. It was a wake-up call. I promised myself I'd never let someone manipulate me like that again. I'd learn from this disaster and come out stronger. I also started dating again, cautiously. Not because I was trying to jump into another relationship right away, but because I finally felt ready to trust someone new, someone who wouldn't lie or cheat. Looking back, I'm glad I caught her when I did. It hurt like hell, but it also saved me from years of misery. I learned a lot from this experience, things I wish I didn't have to go through, but things that made me realize the value of honesty, trust, and respecting myself. To anyone out there feeling the same pain, just know, you're not alone. It's okay to feel broken, to be angry, to cry. But also remember that you deserve better. You're worth so much more than someone who cheats, lies, and manipulates. Trust your instincts, stand up for yourself. And never forget that even in the darkest moments, there's a way to find the light again. If there's one thing I hope others take away from this, it's that you can survive betrayal, even if it feels like the end of everything. Because in the end, the only person you really need to rely on is yourself. And once you do, you might find that even after a betrayal like this, there's a future worth fighting for. A future where you're stronger, wiser, and finally free. Now that I've had some time to really reflect on everything, I realize how much this whole experience changed me. At first, I was shattered, trust broken, heart aching, feeling like I'd lost a part of myself. But slowly, I started rebuilding. I learned to trust my instincts again, to listen to that little voice warning me when something was off. I also learned that I don't need someone who manipulates or lies to be happy. I can find happiness on my own, or with someone who respects me and values honesty. One of the biggest lessons I took away is how important it is to pay attention to the signs, no matter how much you want to believe in the best in someone. Because sometimes, love isn't enough. Sometimes people reveal who they really are in moments you never expected. And when that happens, it's better to face the truth than to live in denial or hope she'll change. Because in the end, what matters most is your own mental health, peace of mind, and self-respect. I think the most surprising thing about all of this is how resilient you become after hitting rock bottom. The pain, the anger, even the betrayal, they all teach you things you wouldn't learn any other way. I now see myself as stronger, wiser, more cautious, but also more compassionate. I won't let bitterness consume me. Instead, I use what I've learned to build a better future, one where I choose who I trust and who I let into my life. To anyone reading this who might be going through a similar situation, I want you to know it's okay to feel lost, angry, and hurt. Those feelings are valid, but don't let them define you. You're not alone, and this pain won't last forever. Time does heal, and so does taking control of your life. You're capable of more than you realize. And even after betrayal, you can find your way back to happiness. It's not easy, but it's worth it. I've come out the other side with a clearer mind and a stronger heart. I know now what I want from life and from the people I let in. I refuse to settle for lies and bullshit anymore. No matter how much it hurts right now, I know I'll be okay. Because I've learned that real strength isn't about never falling. It's about how you get back up after you do. And I'm finally standing tall again.